Now, speaking of the lies of the Biden administration, during his campaign and during really the Obama-Biden opposition to the Trump administration, Biden claimed that he was going to do all of these things that would oppose the policies that Trump carried out. Now, many of those policies that Trump carried out were bipartisan policies that Obama carried out when Biden was vice president, and that the Obama-Biden administration continued from the Bush administration. But one of the things that Biden repeatedly said he would do is end the war in Yemen. Now, that's what he said on the campaign trail. Biden said he was going to end the war on Yemen. This is a clip from the beginning of the Biden administration, right when he came in, claiming that he was ending the war. Here you can see this is Reuters. This is one of the main major media outlets in the world. And the title of this video is Biden ends U.S. support of Saudi Arabia in Yemen. A blatant lie. A blatant lie. But anyway, let's listen to what Biden said here really quickly, because it just shows how ridiculous this claim is.
And to underscore our commitment, we are ending all American support for offensive operations in the war in Yemen, including relevant arms sales.
So there you go. That is Biden claiming. Now, of course, what he actually said there, as my colleague Aaron Mate pointed out in this excellent video, well, Biden and the war in Yemen that he and Obama started. Now, Biden's language there was very specific. He said, we're going to end U.S. support for Saudi offensive operations in Yemen. Offensive. Now, by definition, the Saudi war in Yemen from day one has always been an offensive war. Offensive, not defensive. How do you defend yourself? By bombing your southern neighbor, which, by the way, is the poorest country in West Asia, Yemen, whereas Saudi Arabia is one of the richest countries in the world per capita. This is a modern-day monarchy, an absolute monarchy that practices modern-day slavery. It's a modern-day slave state. And this is the country that is one of the world's largest military, has one of the world's largest military expenditures, and works hand in glove with the U.S. military to bomb the hell out of its southern neighbor, killing hundreds of thousands of Yemen since the war began in March 2015. Biden claimed that he was going to end the war in Yemen. This is an article from 2019 from the Washington Post, back when he was in the opposition to the Trump administration, saying that Biden calls for an end to U.S. support for the Saudi war in Yemen. Now it's a U.S.-Saudi war. It's never been just a Saudi war. Washington has always firmly backed this war, and without Washington, Saudi Arabia could never have waged this war. But here's from the debates, the Democratic debates, presidential debates that Biden gave. This is a quote from him saying that he was going to end the war before he became president.
Yemen.
And I would make it very clear, we were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact...
He's talking about Saudi Arabia, of course. This is the Democratic debate. Biden claiming that he's not going to sell more weapons to Saudi Arabia if he wins the presidency.
We were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia. And I would also, as pointed out, I would end the subsidies that we have, end the sale of material to the Saudis, who they're going in and murdering children and they're murdering innocent people. And so they have to be held accountable.
If Joe Biden...
Well, he's right about that. Saudi Arabia has been murdering civilians in Yemen, slaughtering civilians, and doing so with steadfast U.S. support. And that support began in the Obama-Biden administration. It continued strongly under Donald Trump, who visited Saudi Arabia and sword danced with the Saudi monarchy. And now, drum roll, that has continued under the Biden administration. Here is an article from yesterday, November 4th, Biden administration notifies Congress of $650 million arms sale to Saudi Arabia. So much for ending support for Saudi Arabia and the war in Yemen. Thanks, Joe. He said it for years, but of course, now that he's president, change of heart, he's going to continue supporting the murderous Saudi monarchy. The State Department notified Congress of a new $650 million arms sale to Saudi Arabia today. The sale will include 280 advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles. Now, the State Department claims that these missiles are only used for defense capabilities and cannot be used to attack ground targets. All right, well, I'm sure that's the promise that the Saudi monarchy, the medieval Saudi monarchy, gave to its patrons in Washington. Pinky promise, we're not going to continue slaughtering Yemeni civilians. But of course, this has happened repeatedly. The U.S. government claimed that it's not actually helping Saudi Arabia kill civilians in Yemen. But the reality is that Saudi Arabia could not wage war without U.S. support. This has been confirmed even by mainstream media outlets that the U.S. and the U.K. have been directly supporting the war in Yemen, not only with weapons, but also with military personnel. Here's an article in The Guardian of Blairism, the mouthpiece of the British deep state, the British intelligence agencies, and the neoliberal elites. Here's an article titled, "The Saudis couldn't do it without us. The UK's true role in Yemen's deadly war." Now, we should also add the US's true role in Yemen's deadly war. Britain does not merely supply the bombs that fall in Yemen. It provides the personnel and expertise that keep the war going. This is from 2019, and the war continues going on 6 years later. The systematic targeting, they say Saudi-led. I hate that term. It's the US, UK, Saudi, UAE coalition has slaughtered civilians intentionally in Yemen, bombing the hell out of civilian areas, dropping bombs on hospitals, schools, weddings, funerals, even camps for displaced people fleeing the bombing. Saudi Arabia has in effect contracted out vital parts of its war against Yemen to the US and the UK. Britain does not merely supply weapons, it provides the personnel and expertise required to keep the war going. The British government has deployed Air Force personnel to work as engineers, to train Saudi pilots and targeteers. Well, an even larger role is played by BAE Systems, Britain's biggest arms company, which the government has subcontracted to provide weapons, maintenance, and engineers inside Saudi Arabia. BAE Systems also helps support Israeli apartheid and helps the Israeli military brutalize Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. Quote, "The Saudi bosses absolutely depend on BAE Systems," said a former Ministry of Defense attaché to Saudi Arabia from Britain. "They couldn't do it without us," he says. "They couldn't do it without us. If the UK and the US left, if we weren't there, in 7 to 14 days, there wouldn't be a Saudi jet in the skies." So this is a US, UK, Saudi, UAE war. Hundreds of thousands of Yemenis have died in this war for over 6 years now. It unleashed a cholera epidemic. It has caused the worst humanitarian catastrophe on planet Earth. And this is a war that has continued. It's a bipartisan war under Obama, Trump, and Biden. And now Biden continues to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. While he claimed during his campaign and while he claimed in the Trump years that he would end the war, he criticized Trump for doing it. Well, he is continuing to do the same thing. And meanwhile, I mean, you can't help but laugh at the insane hypocrisy, the nonsense of the U.S. propaganda. Here is Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who is this neoconservative war hawk who constantly claims to talk about humanitarian intervention and human rights. Here's a tweet from yesterday, November 4th. The United States stands with our UK, Saudi, and Emirati partners and voice our support for the democratic aspirations of the Sudanese people. This is an incredible quote. Since when do the absolute monarchies, the dictatorships in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates support democratic aspirations of anyone? They're inherited absolute monarchies. There's not a shred of democracy in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They're slave states. But this is the Blinken State Department, which claims to support human rights and democracy while selling more weapons to the Saudi dictatorship and while wagging its fingers at China and Russia and so many other countries. Well, the U.S. claims to be the beacon of democracy. Of course, it's all a lie. Meanwhile, Yemenis keep dying. Yemeni civilians are the ones suffering. Well, the Biden administration continues to sell more weapons to the Saudi monarchy. Here are the statistics from September from the Yemen Data Project, really the only organization in the world that actually keeps track of the U.S. British-backed Saudi bombing of Yemeni civilians. The latest data shows that air raids were at a 6-month high. These are U.S. British-backed Saudi air raids at a 6-month high this September, with 711 airstrikes, the highest rate in a year. Bombing civilians, including a vehicle that slaughtered 7 civilians, including 3 children. This is what the Biden administration is doing in Yemen. Saudi Arabia can only do it because of continued U.S. support. And Biden claimed during his presidential campaign and during the Trump years that he would end it. It was a lie. Like so many things that U.S. presidents say, it was a lie.